It has attributes, but you're asking me what are the attributes that it lacks?
No, what are the attributes? If you say it is limited in its attributes.
It could be limited. We don't know what it is.
No,
so, yeah.
could be means there's a possibility.
Yes.
If there's a possibility of limitation, we need to know how that can be limitation applied to a thing that is necessarily existing.
Yeah. We don't know what the thing is, so we can say. So
No. If you say a possibility that this can be limited by what? It is always there in existence. What is there before it?
So limitation, the word limitation is subjective, right? So it has a set of properties and some properties it doesn't have.
Okay.
So whatever properties, we don't know what properties it has. We don't know what the thing is. It could be the universe, it could be whatever you want to call it. It could be God, for example. But unless we find out what the thing is, we don't know what all its properties are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So has this necessary existence been the one involved in transformation of our current universe? Or something else is it?
It doesn't have to be. It could just be the thing that starts the thing, and then the rest of it happens, like domino effect. The first domino is not necessarily the domino that moves the domino later on, but it's the first domino, and it was...
No, we see the existence of physical laws in our universe.
Yeah.
And the physical laws are concrete manifestation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying the necessary existence are those physical laws, or the creator of the physical laws?
When I say necessary existence, I just mean whatever was there millions of years of evolution. Since always, that's necessary existence.
Yeah, and what's the relationship between the physical laws and the necessary existence?
It could be no, it could be the same thing. It could be it existed and then it started a thing and it disappeared. We don't know what it is, right?
Well, let's understand this.
Yeah.
The physical laws themselves are self-aware or not self-aware?
They're just descriptions of the universe.
Right, so they're not self-aware. Yeah. So how do they manifest concrete actions in reality?
They're just how things work. They're not
Physical laws themselves are not self-aware. They don't have a volition.
There's no such thing as physical laws. The universe behaves a certain way. That's it. What we call is natural. What we call that behavior is natural laws.
No.
There's no independent law. Natural.
They are laws.
No, what do you mean by law? The universe behaves a certain way.
The universe behaves in various aspects with the inherent laws operating within it.
Yeah, but the universe and the laws are the same thing.
No.
Why is it different?
The reality that we see has certain operational laws acting within that thing, well, the universe.
Opposite. The universe behaves a certain way, we see how it behaves, then we write down those laws.
Yeah.
It's different though.
So this behavior of this universe, which we're now quantifying with some mathematical laws, these laws are abstract.
Yes.
How do they manifest into concrete realization?
They're abstract in our heads, but they don't exist outside of our heads. They're just the way the universe behaves. And so,
because we've discovered these laws and quantified in mathematics, so these laws, if something behaves like two things attract with each other, okay? So it's a brute fact?
Yes, it could be brute fact, yes.
God is a brute fact then?
It could be brute fact, but...
No, that's it. Why the discussion? Just say God is a brute fact and follow him.
No, but that's if we know that he exists, right? That's if we know...
No, you just said brute fact.
No.
The universe operates in a way it's a brute fact. Then the universe, the way it's operating it, you can say God is the one who's operating the universe. It's a brute fact.
Could, but it's not.
It's not about could.
No, but...
Do you know the brute fact when we say something is a brute fact?
Yeah, it just means just is with no explanation.
Yeah. Why do we say that?
Because we can't find the explanation.
They had a comeback in the 80s. The original skin.
Why do we accept things axiomatically, like this is axiomatically true, that's it, for granted? There are certain times we say that's it, we don't go beyond that.
Yeah, because there can be two reasons. One, we can't go beyond that. We don't have the knowledge or the reasoning to go beyond that, or it's useful for other conclusions that we can derive things from, like certain axioms.
Because once you reach to a point where you've reached to an explanation, you don't need an explanation for the explanation. Yeah. So this universe, when it operates with...
I don't agree with what you just said, but sure.
So when you reach to an explanation, you still need an explanation.
So the problem, you're going to get an infinite regress, right? But you can't escape the infinite regress. This is the problem.
You can't escape
an infinite regress. So you always still... we'll need an explanation. There's no way to just stop and say no more explanation needed.
So if someone's a skeptic, they will always be a skeptic. They could never come to a realization that this is a fact.
If their skepticism is dependent on having a final explanation, then
there is no final explanation. That's why you disputed.
No, I know.
You disputed with me saying there isn't a final explanation. An explanation, you ask what's the explanation of that.
Yeah.
A skeptic.
If their skepticism depends on having a final explanation.
No. Your paradigm. There is
my paradigm?
There is no final explanation. That means, in your view, a skeptic will always remain skeptic.
Yeah, but I'm not a skeptic like that.
You say there is no final explanation.
But you don't need a final explanation to believe something.
If you do not accept that there can be a final explanation, you don't need to go beyond it, and you say no, we can ask another question. What is the explanation of that explanation? Then in your view, a skeptic will always remain skeptic.
What does skepticism mean to you?
Tell me.
Someone who doubts everything, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to be a skeptic even if you don't have the final explanation. You could just stop and say, okay.
You cannot stop.
You could stop.
Why?
Why do you need to go forever? You're not going to get every answer.
Look at the inconsistency. When you give an explanation, you say, I'm not happy with that explanation. I need to ask again.
No, I never said I'm not happy.
No, possibility. You said you don't have to.
I haven't made a position yet.
When you are giving the possibility that we can ask an explanation for the explanation, that means it can go on forever and forever.
Yeah.
Likewise, a skeptic who is doubtful about anything, why should they stop?
They should stop. If they want to be skeptical because they can't get the final
No, that's the logical thing. You should be consistent. Just like an explanation should not have an end, the skepticism should not have an end. That means there is no...
Why should I have an end?
That means there's no...
I can't explain.
You cannot know anything.
I
cannot know anything.
I can sense you. I can see you exist. I don't know all the chain of explanations that got to you, but I see you, I'm talking to you.
That's what you think.
So I know you exist.
No, it could be an illusion.
No, but see, I'm not a skeptic, that's why. Because for me, the senses are justification enough. I see you, that's
your senses, when you are sleeping, do you feel that you are traveling, you're walking, you're eating?
Yeah, you can't tell you're dreaming.
Where are you using your senses? Yes. But was that experience true? That when you were flying to America or somewhere?
No, it wasn't true.
So your experience, your sense perception can be misleading, can be not true. So you can't make your sense experience arbitration of truth, what the reality is.
But I see you, I interact with you, haven't woken up.
That could be a dream. It could be a dream.
Sure, but all the evidence I've accumulated tells me probably you exist.
No, this could be a dream.
It could be, but unlikely.
How are you going to be certain it's not a dream?
I don't need certainty, that's the point. You can believe something without certainty, right? Like I didn't see Donald Trump in person, but I believe he exists.
But what I'm saying is, your experience...
My standard is not 100% certainty for belief.
So you can't accept anything, for sure.
But I don't need to. So the difference between a belief and certainty. I can believe something without being certain.
Can you be certain ever?
Can I be certain ever? Math, 1 + 1 = 2.
So you can't be certain?
About abstractions, not empirically.
Why not? If you go outside the Earth and go around it, can you not be sure about the shape? Some people over there saying the Earth is flat.
No, you said, so let me re-clarify. I said you can believe something without being certain, right?
I'm saying, can you be certain in reality?
So by certain, do you mean my belief is 100%? I believe strongly, or do you mean...
I am not using the word belief here loosely. I'm saying, can you be certain about something?
I know, I'm just trying to understand.
Like the shape of the Earth. Can you be certain about it?
I'm certain about you being here, the trees being here, and this loose sense of certainty.
So you can be certain the Earth is not flat?
As long as we're not talking about logical certainty.
I'm not talking about logical certainty.
Then of course.
I'm talking about the real certainty.
I'm certain about many things.
Real certainty.
Certainty.
Which is independent of your just logical abstraction and so on.
Yes. In that case, I'm certain about you, the camera, the
So
sky.
you're certain?
Yes.
Can we be certain about God?
Can we? Or am I? If you have enough evidence, of course it can be.
We can be, right?
If you have evidence,
Right. What evidence would satisfy you?
Any evidence.
No. Not any evidence. If I give you an evidence, you would say that that's not satisfying.
It depends on the evidence. I have to evaluate it to see it, right?
No, it has to be
type of evidence?
It has to be a type of evidence that is satisfying to you.
Think about your question. If someone gets murdered in a house and the cop comes, the judge doesn't say what kind of evidence would you need to know that guy's guilty. He's going to go look, whatever he finds, he pieces it together and then makes a hypothesis.
A testimonial evidence may not be accepted because that
He may accept
because
testimonial.
a testimony giver may be a lying person.
Yeah, but
Right?
depends on the person's standard of evidence, right?
No.
Maybe someone
Do
wants
you
to
accept testimonial evidence is accepted in court of law? It is.
It is.
Accepted.
Yeah.
So now a judge may sometimes say this is not acceptable because he has a suspicion about that individual. He's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
So it's not that evidence is acceptable. What type of
I know,
evidence?
but I can't tell you beforehand what is the set of evidence that
So what type of evidence are you
I'll tell you
seeking?
any kind, but I can tell you.
I tell you I saw God, you wouldn't believe me.
No, when I say any kind, I don't mean I'm going to believe everything you say. I'm saying I don't have a pre-filtered criteria of evidence to pick from. Whatever convinces me, like I don't know what. Like if you
Do
tell me,
you know what will convince you?
well, I know what will convince me for sure.
Yeah.
If God came and attracted me with me, I would be convinced.
So if God came, and how would you picture that? Imagine someone in the sky saying, "I'm God."
Yeah, like let's say he moved the clouds or something.
Yeah, move the cloud.
Yeah, whatever.
And how do you know that you're not deluded?
Well, if you all see it,
Mass delusion?
no, I don't. I'll be, if everybody
happening.
sees it, they investigate it. They found. I know it happens, but
It happens.
But it was still
It's not just a Fatima. A lot of people, hundreds of people, being mass deluded.
Yeah. But if, let's say everybody saw.
No,
the
no.
whole
You give me an
planet.
example.
Yeah.
Now, within this example, I am saying we could be all mass deluded.
Sure.
Then how can you be certain?
But let's say the whole planet saw it, right?
You gave a type of
Yes.
scenario
Yes.
that if God came to me and moved the clouds and so on, I said,
Yeah.
look, imagine something did that, and this brother would come and say, this is a mass delusion.
Well, he can't
And
see it. He can't see it.
Sorry, can I answer that question? Do you want to take over here? Because his level of certainty is quite different in terms of. I'm sorry. Can you give that change?
So I heard there that you don't have, do you know the criteria for the evidence that will convince you that God exists?
Your question doesn't make sense to me. Because what you're saying is I go to a house, I'm a cop, let's say, right? Somebody's dead in the house.
Yep.
What you're saying is what would I need to find in the house to know the guy's guilty? I can't tell you, did he use a knife, did he use a gun? I don't know.
Okay.
It's whatever I see, then when I put
Yeah,
it together,
yeah.
then I know what the thing was that convinced me.
Okay.
Right? I can't tell you beforehand a priori, like, okay, if I find a gun in the closet, that will convince me.
Do you believe in a priori truths?
Yes.
You do believe in a priori truths?
In math and logic.
So you're kind of a mathematician, are you?
I'm not a mathematician, but
you
I studied
do
somewhere in the past. Logic
So you're right. So you've studied logic, right?
somewhere in the past.
So in other words, you do believe that there are certain fundamental. Sorry?
I'm not that good at it, but
No. Well,
I'm joking. Yeah.
but that's a good place to start, I think, because we can at least determine that there are certain things in the world that all human beings are going to have to agree upon.
Axioms.
Axioms.
But when you say have
the
to,
fundamental axioms of bi-valued logic.
Yeah.
So the law of non-contradiction is something that we would have to intuitively agree upon that it is truth. Yes? Yes?
it's a bit simple to say intuitively, but yes.
Well, it has to be intuitively because otherwise we'll have to make a paradigm shift beyond
I
that.
agree we have to accept it, but it just when you say intuitively accepted, to me it's more than intuition that makes the law of non-contradiction true. But
More than intuition.
Yeah.
What would be more than intuition?
it's like I don't know the answer to the question.
The intuition is based upon our rationality.
But what I mean is
So if you allow me to finish.
Yes.
So the rationality is what determines intuition, right? You can't have intuition without rationality.
There was intuition. You can't have.
You can't have rationality. You can't have intuition without having a rationale behind it.
No, you could have irrational intuitions.
You can have irrational intuitions, and you believe that that's an intuition.
Not all intuitions are irrational, but some intuitions are irrational.
Like what?
Like if let's say someone's very suspicious about their wife, they may have intuition that their wife is cheating on them, but it's irrational because they have like a mental problem or they're paranoid.
Okay, so you're taking intuition to mean in a colloquial sense. I'm talking.
You have a different meaning. Yeah.
I'm talking more from a fundamental logical sense. So you have an intuition meaning a synonym for a priori.
Sure.
So that's what I mean by intuition.
Okay.
So I thought that would have been obvious, given that we're talking about the bi-valued laws of logic.
Yeah, but
so what I'm saying is that if you're talking about the bi-valued laws of logic, these are known
they're self-evident.
intuitively.
They're self-evident.
They're self-evident.
Yeah.
So you could. That's what I mean by
Yeah, I
intuition.
get
Sorry,
you. Okay, I get you.
Maybe I should have clarified it, right? So there are certain fundamental laws that we all agree upon, right? And what we can do, I think you can probably try and use these laws and ask certain fundamental questions. Like, for instance, does the universe have a beginning?
Yeah, like a Big Bang or whatever. Yeah, sure.
So do you have an idea of that, or?
I'm not a scientist. I just know Big Bang happened. Let's say scientists say that.
Okay.
And so it started the universe.
Yeah. So it's I think turning to the scientists would be a half a good idea in terms of the fact that they're the experts here and we're not, right?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. So we don't talk about things we're not experts on.
Experts on, right?
But
so we're dependent upon them.
yeah.
So I guess
But I think intuitively, if you're asking intuitively, I think at the beginning, probably something along the lines of what scientists discovered is probably true.
right. So the universe has a beginning.
Sorry?
The universe has a beginning. We agree to that.
Yes.
Yeah. So when we talk about the universe having a beginning, a universe can't create itself, can it? Right. So therefore, there is a being. Has Mansur been over this with you?
I went over this with
Another guy.
I didn't book. I was listening to the conversation. So
Okay,
I know the argument.
You know the argument.
Yeah.
So what's your what makes that argument problematic for you in accepting?
The properties you get after it. Let's say you establish necessary being, which I kind of agree with.
Yeah.
What we're going to disagree on.
What is a being then? What is it being for you?
It's a good question. For me, the necessary being, I think we got a little bit confused here. There's not necessarily a necessary being. There's a necessary thing which always existed.
And what is the difference between a thing and a being?
When you say being, it implies an agency, and that's the part I guess we discussed.
So you believe that the universe has a beginning. You believe that the universe was brought into effect by a thing.
So be careful. When you say universe, right? I don't want to be pedantic. Okay?
Sorry.
I'm not trying to be pedantic.
I'll say the world, because the world is more expansive than the universe.
So-
I'm talking about all existent things.
Okay, so all existing things, but is God existing?
Let's come to that.
but-
You're jumping the gun here, right?
No. If
Because
God-
what we're trying to determine here is step by step. We're not talking about God because God is a being, but you're not even convinced by the existence of a being.
I want to clarify the definition. That's all. So when you say universe,
No, but I haven't mentioned God, so I don't need to clarify that.
no, I know. The reason why it's like when you say everything which exists. If I take your definition literally, that includes God. Is that what you want me to take from you?
No, I'm not.
Right.
I'm going to go in.
When you say
I'm going to go.
existence.
I'm going to go at it step by step.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't think I even need to answer that, nor do I need to justify that until we've laid the foundation, and then inshallah we can go from there. Right? Where are you from, by the way?
Canada.
Oh, Canada. Originally, what country are you from?
Canada. Yeah.
Okay. Originally, your ethnic background.
I'm a mix. I'm a mix.
So you're a mix, are you?
Yeah.
Because you strike me as Pakistani or
No,
Indian.
no.
Okay. My apologies. So you believe that the universe or the world was brought into existence by a thing?
The universe. So this is why the definition is important. Okay.
Whatever this thing is.
So there was something. That something changed or brought other stuff into existence, and all together we call that the universe. Now, to say that it created the universe as a separate thing, this is an assumption. There's no need to have that assumption.
Yeah, that's true. But what I'm trying to drive you towards is the understanding, firstly, that the universe has a beginning. The universe, as we agreed, can't create itself, so therefore it requires something outside of itself to bring it into existence.
But it could have always existed itself, right? It could have always existed.
So let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
The universe had a beginning?
Okay, so I want to clarify what you mean the universe, okay?
The world.
Scientists say Big Bang happened, right? So prior to the Big Bang, there was a singularity and then expanded. This is the story they tell us, right?
Yep.
So is that singularity part of the universe or no?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if that's part of the universe, then I would say the universe never had a beginning. In that definition.
Okay, so the universe never had a beginning?
Not necessarily had a beginning, but yeah.
Yeah, so that thing has always existed, hasn't it?
Exactly, yes.
Right. So
That's all I'm trying to clarify.
Right, so if a thing has always existed, was there time?
Was there time?
Was there time for this thing?
Sorry?
Has time always existed for this thing?
As far as I know, time is a measurement of two different events.
Exactly. So therefore there is no time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So when this thing, if it didn't have any agency, how would it know when to come into effect?
It doesn't.
So how did this universe come to effect? What's your rational basis for it?
So if we accept cause and effect, where a cause must precede the effect, you will have an infinite. Either cause and effect doesn't work somehow, or there's an infinite cause and effect.
And there can't be any cause and effect here, right? Because you said that the singularity exists. What? It's timeless.
There's no time. Yeah.
So it's a timeless thing. That just exists.
Yeah.
Now the question I'm going to pose to you is, how can a timeless thing have agency?
It doesn't have agency.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So therefore, what's the rationale for the existence of the
There's
universe?
no explanation for that. It's a paradox. I can't answer.
What do you mean it's a paradox?
Because
The universe. Look, we exist. We exist right here.
paradox. You know we exist somehow,
Right.
But we can't logically deduce how we existed.
Okay, so we would
We'll always end up with a contradiction.
No. It's not a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. We would say say that because there's no way of actually determining how this thing, timeless thing, brought itself about, the explanation is absurd. It's an absurd explanation. So then we can ask ourselves, is there an alternative explanation, right?
I would argue there isn't, but you make one for me, please.
Well, no, there has to be. Why? Because we're now stuck at an absurdity.
Yeah.
We're not saying we don't know, because remember,
so something happened, yes.
it's like what Wittgenstein said. He said that this is not an I don't know something about which nothing can be said. We've come to the conclusion that something can be said, which is that it's an absurdity, so therefore there's an alternative explanation.
What I meant is, make the explanation. I think it would be hard to. When I say paradox, I mean even your explanation will run into the same problem. I think,
Okay, so let's go with it. Let's go with it.
Yeah, go.
Since the universe doesn't have an explanation for how it came about, there has to be something that exists outside of the universe. Okay, then explain to me what you're saying when you say that no, it doesn't follow. You're saying that there's a third ontology.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Wait. There's existence, and there's non-existence, right? Is it non-existence?
No, non-existence is nothing, so there's nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so therefore the thing that brought the universe into existence must be something.
Which is singularity or something. Yeah.
No, it can't be a singularity, because the same flaw that you agree is an absurdity for the singularity has to now apply for this thing that exists outside of it, which would lead to a vicious.
Infinite regressive.
Exactly. So therefore that can't be a good explanation. So therefore the thing that brought it into existence cannot be contingent. It has to be.
Dependent.
No, necessary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the only two options.
Yeah.
So we have a necessary thing now.
I agree. There's a necessary thing.
Well, no, you didn't, because you were trying to say that the other thing was an absurdity, like the singularity. I was trying to get you to understand that it can't be. It has to be something other than the singularity, and so that thing has to be necessary.
But whatever that thing is, you could say. When I say necessary thing, I don't mean it was a singularity. I mean it's whatever that thing is.
Okay. So it's a necessary thing that brought the contingent thing into existence, right? Now this necessary thing, it needs to have volition, wouldn't you say?
Volition means what? It has wants? Like a mind?
No, volition in that
It moves.
it knows when to bring something about.
No, it doesn't need to.
Why?
It should be a domino effect or whatever, right?
No, it wouldn't.
Or spontaneous.
No, it wouldn't. What makes you come to that conclusion that it would be a domino effect?
No, it could be. It could be its own mechanism. It just has like a property in here.
No, because remember, this is a necessary thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't require anything outside of itself. Otherwise, it falls into that vicious regress, which we said can't apply to this necessary thing.
Yes.
Do you agree with this?
My position is that there's a third way. There's cause, there's effect, and there's some other way of causation that we cannot conceive of.
No. You can't bring that conceive of business, because we already said that something which is beyond the realms of conception can't even be spoken about. If I asked you to prove it, you're going to say, I can't say because I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to avoid that. But
no, but you have to avoid that. That is a priori. You have to avoid that.
Yeah.
You can't just throw that in because it's convenient, because you're being tucked into a corner.
No, but I don't want to give you an answer that's not my actual position, right?
No. What I'm saying to you, my friend, is that you can't even go to that third option. There's only two options now.
What's the two options?
The contingent thing, which is the universe, which we've agreed has to, if it can't bring itself about, it falls into absurdity, and therefore the only other option is not the third option, which we don't know.
Yes, the necessary thing.
A necessary thing. Now, this necessary thing, it has to have volition, because this necessary thing that cannot depend upon anything outside of itself brought the thing into existence, and you can't have something that can just mechanically bring it about.
But I don't know how it brought things.
I'm not asking you how.
I don't know the answer to the question.
Okay, but the logical, if we take it to its logical end,
So the reason why
it has to be.
I'll tell you why it can't have volition. Okay. The reason why it can't have volition is because there was a period in which it didn't start the universe, right? Because the universe is not eternal. Do we agree?
Yes.
Okay.
The universe is not eternal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means that there was a point in which there was no universe and a point in which there was a universe, right?
Yep.
And something occurred which allowed it to exist. The only way that could happen is if there was a change from the period before and the period after.
Very good.
If that change occurred, it didn't occur in the first period, it occurred in the second period, which means that the sufficient conditions for it to come about wasn't present in the period when which the universe was present.
I would say to you that that's only true if you believe in creatio ex nihilo. That is only true if you believe that the universe came about from nothing. What if I told you that I hold the position that God brought the universe, which had a beginning, it was not eternal, from a previous existent thing? What would you say then? So in other words, there is time.
Doesn't solve the the problem.
It does. I'll tell you why it solves the problem. Because if there's time, this being now knows when to bring something about. That your paradox can only arise if the thing is outside of time, and so therefore your question would be, but how does it know when to bring that thing into effect? Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
so I've just solved it. I've told you that there was time before the universe.
Yeah.
So therefore, the necessary being that brought the universe into existence,
So when you say time, right? Time to me means I take a
the
step.
measurement of motion.
Exactly. Yes.
The measurement of motion, right?
There's no such thing as outside of time or inside of time.
No, I don't believe that there is a timeless realm.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I disagree with the
I don't
idea of
understand what you
creatio ex
mean.
nihilo.
Yeah, but I don't understand what you mean by outside of time and time. You have to clarify.
So I didn't. What did I say?
You said
Outside of time.
yeah. But I don't understand what that means. Outside of time.
Okay, so what I mean is, if the universe had an absolute beginning, meaning it was brought about from nothing,
Yes.
not from pre-existing
Yes, yes.
matter.
Time starts there is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since time starts there, the problem that you've just raised, which is that this necessary being would not be able to exercise volition, I agree with you.
Okay.
But I'm saying the third option here is that therefore there must have been something that came before it. So this necessary being must exist in time in order to get around the paradox of this necessary being bringing the universe from a point of timelessness.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah.
So-
That's what I think as well. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
So here's my answer to your question. The necessary being exists. The necessary being must have volition.
Yeah.
This volition must be exercisable in time.
Yeah.
And this being has never been timeless.
Yeah, but the problem with
It's always been creating one thing after another. So just very quickly.
That's what you
And I'm almost finished. It's always been creating one thing after another, with no single thing existing eternally with this being.
So your position is that there was always something which coexisted with the thing?
Yes. So the idea of creatio ex nihilo, from my position,
Is it a Muslim position?
yes, it's an impossibility, because in the Quran, Allah has said that He created the heavens and the earth from pre-existing matter, from smoke.
Then I could just make the argument that the universe cycles.
No, but you can't. I'll tell you why. This is where it gets
You
interesting.
just gave me an infinite regress argument.
No, it's not infinite regress.
I'll tell you why it's infinite regress.
I'll tell you why. Because I've spoken about this, and I know where you're going to go with this.
What am I going to say?
You're going to say that it's an infinite regress because one thing depends upon the other, which depends upon the other, which depends on the other.
Because you can't create the future thing at the same time as the
And this is where I'm going to explain to you that it's not possible. An infinite regress cannot apply to the third model I've given you. It applies for creatio ex nihilo, or a single universe. Sorry, I take that back. It applies for a single universe. Why? Because a single universe is self-contained.
Okay.
Yes? So the cause and effect is contained within the universe. So in order for the cause to come about, it requires a cause that came before it, and that requires a cause. So in other words, there's nothing external to it, meaning there's no contingent thing outside of it that allowed that cause to come about by itself. My position is as follows. The universe has a beginning, God is in time, and God brings about the causes in the moment, in the present moment.
Occasionalism, I think.
No, occasionalism. That's occasionalism is God brings about something from one moment to another ex nihilo.
Oh, okay.
From absolutely nothing. Exactly. But I don't believe that. I believe in what's known as creatio ex continuum, or qua continuum. He continues.
So all motion is from God. Is that what that applies from your?
No, God is the one who creates things in the present moment. So when we talk about God or the being who wills to create in the present, he doesn't require anything outside of the present, because that thing that was before the moment in the present didn't exist. So here I'll bring in another concept. It's known as presentism. The idea that only the present exists.
But this is like it's like a meaningless to me. What you just said, the present only exists. What else would exist other than the present?
Exactly. So intuitively we know that the past no longer exists. The future is yet to exist, but it hasn't come into existence.
One set of atoms are arranged in one set of way, motion occurs, and then they're arranged in a second set of ways, motion occurs, and they're arranged in a third way. It is so on and so forth. This is what I understand.
And then it goes back to a point where the universe has a beginning, but it was
something, and then singularity occurred.
And the singularity was from a being that has at least volition. So you
have to go. Sorry, we're gonna ask a question.
Go on.
By the way, I'm not interrupting you. I'm just. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude.
It's fine. Don't worry.
fine.
So volition, I didn't see how you got the volition though. You have to.
So volition is something that decides to bring something about at a moment in time.
Yeah. But how do you get out of the cause? How do you get out of the infinite regress exactly?
Okay, the infinite regress here is that if this being creates in the present, in the present moment, this being is a necessary being. Otherwise, the very same issues that we had with the universe having a timeless beginning would affect this necessary being. But this necessary being is necessary because we've come to the conclusion that there is no third choice. So this necessary being, it creates in time. And so when this being decides to create something, it has to have a volition. Otherwise, the very notion of decision in time doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
No, but let's just say there's an automatic process that just creates something and then creates another thing, creates another thing, creates another
No,
thing.
but it still requires volition. Because look,
No, it's automatic. It's no
no,
volition.
but I'll tell you why. Because there's a moment where the beginning of the present, the present begins and the present ends. Yes?
Yes. As soon as motion is introduced, you get the next state.
Yes, but the motion isn't self-replicating. It's not dependent upon itself. It requires the necessary being to bring it into motion.
Okay, sure.
So therefore, the thing that brought the motion into existence, it's dependent upon the necessary being.
It's a battery that makes the thing keep going. Yes? Is that a way to put it?
Yeah, kind of, but we would say that this battery is the will. When God creates the thing, or when this being causes the motion to occur, this being is choosing to do it from the beginning of that present moment until the end, until the next present moment. So there is no continuity of causes and effects. Each cause is independent of the previous cause. It is that cause is dependent upon the volition bringing that cause into effect. Does that make sense?
I think I get what you're saying, but I'm going to clarify a little bit. Okay. So as I understand what you're saying, the thing that's there, it introduces some kind of motion to the system, moves it around, and now becomes a second state. Which is
the thing that's there is caused,
causing the system to change.
is brought about by the will of that being. So it decides to
however
bring
you want to start the chain. There's a necessary thing which presses like a button or whatever. Press the button and it alters everything, and then does it again and alters everything. And it keeps doing that.
Yeah, it keeps doing that.
Will, right?
Yeah, it keeps doing it.
But you agree with me that you can't. The button at T1 and T2 are independent, but they can't be at the same time.
Yes.
So you have a sequence.
Yes.
So if you have a sequence, what happens at T2 must occur only after T1 occurs.
Yes.
And if you have that infinite chain of T1 to infinity, the being will never press the button that made...
No. You're making the fundamental mistake here, that the T1 is dependent upon the previous T2.
It is dependent though, because...
No, but I've already told you that it isn't, because I'll tell you why. Because we've already agreed that the necessary being is required in order to bring about the universe.
Motion needs to
exactly.
Place,
but it's a necessary being that requires to bring it about. Otherwise, if you take the necessary being out and you say, oh, it's an infinite regress, you've changed the rules of the debate. You're now saying that the contingent thing requires a contingent thing, which requires a contingent thing. So that's a misrepresentation of the argument that we've agreed upon. Has to be sound.
No, but what I'm saying though is that your explanation is not getting around the problem, because you still have a chain of dependency. Not in maybe the way you're.
Not in the contingent sense. Unless you can show me how the cause requires the previous cause to exist.
Because if the necessary being knows when to press the button, right? That means he's pressing the button. In a sense,
okay, then
he's dependent on the previous.
Then it's nothing more than a causally effete condition.
Causally effete condition.
Yes, meaning
it's still a condition. It has to occur physically before the other.
And what's the problem with the condition?
Because then the condition is dependent on the. So the condition is like this. The algorithm is kind of like this.
Because remember, the condition does not bring about the cause.
No, I know, but
that's the difference.
It kind of does, though.
No, it doesn't.
Because
I'll tell you why. The condition ends at the end of the present moment.
Yeah, I know.
So what brings about the next present moment is not the condition, because conditions are causally effete by nature.
No, but I know. But let me make the argument. You can tell me what's wrong with it. Okay? He has the thing. I don't want to say he has to. The thing has.
No, call it he, because I'm going to now bring you to the next point, which is that this thing has to have power.
Okay.
Because you can't bring about something
power.
except that it has to have some type of power. Because something that is that has volition, it must have power.
I agree with that.
Okay. And if it has power, it must have wisdom.
If you get volition, you almost have wisdom. But that's fine.
Good. So if you have these three attributes, the thing must be alive.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm going to dispute the volition, not the power.
Go on.
And then that's where the crux of the argument is.
Yeah, go on.
But so I just want to get the fencing straight. So you have a present, right? Now that thing is pressing the button when the present has been established. It knows now that it's time for the next state, right?
Yep.
So that means it won't or it can't press the button for the second state until the first state has been actualized, right? Therefore, the second state is dependent on the knowledge. Is dependent on the knowledge
yes,
of the
knowledge.
being.
Thank you.
On the knowledge of the being that the first state has been completed.
Yep.
If that's the case, and you have infinite states, the being will never have the knowledge that any of the states have been actualized.
Why?
Because it's infinite regress. The same reason why.
No. Knowledge.
This is a trap.
No.
That's why it's a paradox.
No, I'll tell you why your mistake here is. You're treating knowledge as though.
Are you a philosophy guy by the way?
Well, look, I've looked into philosophy to some extent, but you're treating knowledge as though as the same as a physical cause.
You have to put it. Because the knowledge is not the same.
Look. If this being has knowledge of the present moment, right?
Yes.
Why can it not have knowledge of all the previous moments if we agree that those previous moments must be there?
I agree. No, it can have it, but it doesn't. What it has to change. What has to change is the knowledge that the present moment has actualized. Then you have infinite regress.
Yes. Okay. So what we say, okay, that's a good point. So what you're talking about here is knowledge concreto, or knowledge that is concrete in nature.
What the jargon.
I'll break it down. Yeah? Call it knowledge that is concrete in nature as opposed to knowledge that is abstract.
Yes.
So God has. So God has. Let's bring God into the fray.
Yeah, go ahead.
God has abstract knowledge, right?
Yes.
Of what He's going to do.
Past things,
Yes.
but He knows when the trigger. It's like a program. You run a program.
Yep.
The program's written, but it's not executed until it gets to light.
So when it comes to God having concrete knowledge, now naturally, the thing that comes into existence is different to when it's non-existent, right?
Yes.
So the knowledge of what is non-existent can't be the same as the knowledge of what is existent. Yes?
Yeah, and you get different regress.
Exactly. So we would say that God's knowledge of the concrete particulars increases.
And we have sure, fine, but you have it. Okay, finish your point.
But his knowledge of what is abstract has always been there.
Fine, but that doesn't solve the problem because if the knowledge increases, then you have that means what you're saying is his knowledge has to reach a certain level.
No, but you're missing the point here. Remember, there's knowledge that is knowledge of the thing that is yet to exist.
Yes.
So God has knowledge of it, and He knows when it's going to occur.
Yeah, but doesn't solve the problem still.
But when the thing comes into existence, then God has knowledge that is new.
Yes, exactly.
But it's different to the knowledge that He had previously. Because remember, abstract knowledge and no. Let me finish the point. Abstract knowledge can't exist in the present. And you're conflating between abstract knowledge and concrete knowledge existing in the present such that God has to have an infinite regress of knowledge. We're saying no.
What I'm
because we have to admit that abstract knowledge can only exist when the thing that is concrete doesn't come into existence.
Yes, but you're still making a thing where God changes somehow. Right?
No, but I've already told you, I've already submitted that God in His concrete knowledge can change, and He has to change.
But then
so we don't have a problem with that.
No, but
I would say I wouldn't have a problem.
But maybe I didn't get the point, so please clarify. If that change, if there's any kind of change you're introducing to the model, which you have, right? That little bit of change is going to create an infinite regress because that change cannot occur unless as these students come actualize first.
No, because remember, infinite regress. What we're talking about here is
the word infinite regress.
No. You have to because I think you're stuck on this idea of traversing an infinite. A traversal of an infinite requires a cause that is dependent upon a previous cause. God's knowledge is not dependent upon the previous knowledge. All God has to do is to have an understanding of when He decides to bring about the present and when He decides to end the present. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you're still.
So therefore, it can't be it can't be an infinite regress. It can't amount to a paradox because His knowledge is not dependent upon His previous knowledge to bring the thing about at that present moment in the present.
But it is dependent because let's say he has concrete knowledge of a certain present, right? Now, on the second state, he has new knowledge, which is the previous state occurred and this current
But
state.
that's the concrete knowledge.
Yeah, but it's different. The concrete knowledge changes.
Yes.
Right. Concrete knowledge changes, but it changes in an accumulative fashion. It's cumulative.
But you remember, he has abstract knowledge as well.
I know, but it doesn't matter because the concrete
No, it does matter. I tell you why. Abstract knowledge can exist for God regarding what will happen in the future and what will happen in the past, meaning those things that haven't yet occurred. So don't conflate between abstract knowledge and concrete
Yeah,
knowledge.
I'm trying not to. So
Okay, so now you use abstract. You have abstract knowledge. You have concrete knowledge. I think your challenge now is to show that God's concrete knowledge changes
and
and.
dependent on the previous state, which it is. Yeah. Wait, would
Look,
you agree?
you can say that until the cows come home. But I've already said that concrete knowledge only exists when.
No, in the present.
Thank you very much.
But each present, I agree with you. But
So-
each present state is a different set of concrete knowledge, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so God's knowledge increases in terms of his concrete
But
knowledge,
if something increases, it's cumulative, right?
but it's not causally dependent.
No, if it's cumulative, it is causally dependent because each level
No, my brother.
in the thing is
no,
dependent on the one before.
no. It can't be causally dependent because God has abstract knowledge of what will occur in the future. So let's just say there's concrete knowledge of the present.
I think you're conflating the abstract knowledge and concrete knowledge. I think you're conflating the two things.
No, it's obvious. Look, concrete knowledge can't exist with abstract knowledge. Abstract knowledge exists either before or after concrete knowledge.
Yes.
Because what? Let me make it very clear to you. What is more true in its nature? That thing when it exists or that thing when it doesn't exist?
When it exists.
Exactly. Huh?
When it exists.
When it exists. So therefore, abstract knowledge, which is what God has of all things that were before and all things that are going to come after, isn't dependent upon the thing existing. Does that make sense?
No, it does depend on things. And I'll tell you why.
So now you're violating
I'm not
abstract knowledge.
No. Abstract knowledge. Let me simplify the world, okay? When you say, let's just say there's knowledge, okay? To make life easy. If there's knowledge, there's a set. Let's say knowledge is a knowledge of all propositions that are true or something like that, okay? Some trivial definition. In that set, God knows that I'm going to create this thing at this time, I'm going to create all this stuff, and it knows, right? That's what God knows, right?
Yep.
In that set, it also has a subset of knowledge that it knows. I have created this X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
And that set of knowledge is not knowledge until he actually creates it.
Yep.
But in that set it depends on the members within its set. So until he creates something,
What set though?
that set that I created X, Y, Z, and blah blah blah. So there's,
No, but this is why you can't just say, let's just take knowledge. Because you're now
make the argument easier.
No, you're not. You're misrepresenting the argument. I'm going to say to you, if you try and simplify an argument to the point you're straw-manning it.
I'm not strawmanning you though. I think you agree with. I'm not making it a way that's easier for us to communicate.
Okay, so what could be more easier than saying?
What do you disagree with what I just said? So he has a set of things he knows. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm disagreeing with you. I'm trying to understand this subset. Is it the concrete knowledge that you're talking about, or is it the abstract knowledge? Okay, so let's stick with that.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to frame it in a way that make it easier. So the set of things he knows, that set is dependent on the members in the set. So whenever he creates something, a proposition is entered into that set that I have created this thing, which is only true only when he creates the thing.
So I would say to you that would only be true if you can somehow show that abstract knowledge doesn't come into the fray, doesn't come into.
Because it's not true that he hasn't. Because until he creates the thing, the claim that he created the thing is not true.
Remember,
so it's not part of his knowledge.
Okay, but remember, the thing that comes into existence when it is true is only restricted to the present moment. Once that present moment comes to an end, that abstract is replaced, that concrete knowledge is replaced by the next concrete knowledge. And the next concrete knowledge is not dependent upon the previous concrete knowledge. Let me finish. The concrete knowledge can't be dependent upon the next one because that concrete knowledge doesn't exist. What exists is the next.
The abstract knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. So, okay, maybe you're not, okay. I'm not saying that knowledge, pieces of knowledge are directly dependent.
No, but you have to, because you're saying that there's an infinite regress, and the only way you can do that is for all of them to be in the same set.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that
You understand?
yeah, but I think you're not appreciating the point here.
I am, trust me.
the little thing. I don't mean in a.
No, sorry.
The thing that's knowledge, God's knowledge. It can't. So the abstract knowledge exists all at once, right?
Yes.
So, but once it creates something, God's knowledge then becomes dependent on the fact that He created something, and that's where the dependency. The two things are not dependent. The two events are not.
But we don't. Okay, if I were to say to you that this is a dependency that is part of God's perfection, meaning that He's not dependent upon the creation. He's dependent upon His own knowledge and His own action. So if I say to you,
That's fine. Let's go with that. Let me take a point.
just very quickly, I need to at least clarify that. Right? It's a new idea I brought in. So when we say that God wills to do something and He acts, His act has a point to the beginning and a point where it comes to an end. That's all He's dependent upon. He's not dependent upon the condition, in the sense that the condition is just merely a byproduct. Yes. So the byproduct is the concrete knowledge.
The knowledge is changing, right? So
No,
the concrete knowledge is changing.
Yes.
The concrete knowledge.
Please.
That's what I mean when I say
Yeah.
the concrete knowledge is changing.
Yep. And it's dependent upon what? Not his next concrete knowledge, abstract knowledge.
No, I know, but he's also dependent on the previous concrete knowledge, because the next set of concrete knowledge.
No.
The next set of concrete knowledge.
He's not.
Necessarily implies that he has knowledge of the previous concrete knowledge, because part of the concrete knowledge is that I created the past version. That's not in the abstract sense.
Okay. Yeah. So it increases.
But that increasing 100% requires a traversal of an infinite chain of concrete knowledges.
Concrete knowledges, but show me how.
Let me put it this way.
One concrete knowledge is dependent upon the other concrete knowledge. Wait. For the concrete knowledge to come into existence, it seems like what your argument is as follows. You're stating that God's concrete knowledge is the underlying factor for how He determines the creation. But I'm saying to you, it's not.
No, it is part of it.
I'll tell you why. Because it isn't concrete knowledge that brings about God's act. It's His volition. It's the volition.
What I'm arguing is the volition is causally dependent on the knowledge.
No. Here's the undergirder to this, right? Here's the defeater to your argument. It is not the cause and effect. The effect always what? It succeeds the cause. The cause always precedes the effect. So if the cause precedes the effect, the cause is brought about by what? God's will.
Yes.
Not the effect.
Yeah, of course.
So that means there is a temporal hierarchy between the effect and the cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes. So therefore, it can't be the concrete knowledge, because the concrete knowledge is what? It ends when it comes to T2.
But doesn't end, because his next concrete knowledge that he's going to get contains a concrete knowledge that that in the previous state got created. That's part of his concrete knowledge.
And now that
unless he forgets.
No, but he doesn't affect. He doesn't forget, right? No, he doesn't forget, right?
I know that's the problem,
But this concrete knowledge, in order for it to come about, I submitted to you that this being has to bring it about, both the creation and the knowledge, through what? Not the concrete knowledge, His will.
But no, but what I'm saying is
Wait. So since God and creation are different, God's will has to precede the creation. So when the creation... Wait.
that's the trickiest.
No, it's not tricky. I'll tell you why.
Separate from creation.
I'll tell you why.
Sorry, I would argue that he is not separate from creation in the sense that.
No, but you're not arguing for God here. I'm arguing for God here, right?
But I'm saying.
I'm saying to
whatever
you.
that thing is not. Sorry, whatever that thing is has to be somewhat interrelated
Okay,
with creation. Yeah.
but your position will be right if you're arguing for creatio ex deo, meaning God creates from Himself. I'm saying to you that the creation, and we go right back to the beginning of the conversation, that the creation is contingent, and so therefore there must be something outside of the contingent creation. So therefore it can't be creatio ex deo. The creation has to be separate and distinct from the necessary being.
It's not distinct in the sense that I don't know what you mean by distinct, but all I'm saying is
I think you do, because otherwise the same problems that affect the contingency of the creation has to affect the thing that brought into existence.
But that's why it's a paradox, because I think
I told you, but
every creation will have the same problem. That's what I mean.
No. But we already agreed that that it requires a necessary being to break that paradox.
No, that was your argument. I said that
but
you're going to just have the same problem, which it does, because you're still going to have the same problem where the concrete knowledge has to feed into the other concrete knowledge.
And
the will is dependent on the concrete knowledge. Why does it?
I'll tell you why it's not.
Just make the last point. Yeah, because his will is a function of the concrete knowledge.
No.
It has to be because that's how he knows when to make.
No. The concrete knowledge has a beginning, right? Does it have a beginning?
Yeah.
T1?
No, it has no beginning because if it was always there, so it was always.
No, it wasn't. I'm talking about each present moment, concrete knowledge of the because you're trying to prove an infinite regress. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that the concrete knowledge of the present has a beginning. Because look, if we can solve the problem of how the present comes about and how the concrete knowledge of the present comes about,
You told me that.
we've solved the problem for the infinite regress.
No, but hold on. You told me, you told me from the beginning that you think that God is always creating something, right? There's always one-to-one.
That's what I'm going to come to now.
If you say that though, as a clarification, if you're believing is one-to-one relationship, then the concrete knowledge is equally coexistent with God. Whenever there's God in it.
This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. That's only true if you believe that the cause and the effect are simultaneous. I'm saying to you that the cause and the effect cannot be simultaneous. I'm saying that the effect has to come after the cause. Because why? We're not talking about a timeless cause that might bring about an effect. We're talking about a temporal cause. So therefore, so let me finish. So therefore, time has to play its obvious role. The cause precedes the effect.
So the concrete knowledge comes after.
Exactly. The concrete knowledge comes after the
will or whatever.
Oh, thank you. So now. So let's take it to the end point now. Therefore, it's not the concrete knowledge that's dependent upon the previous concrete knowledge. The concrete knowledge is dependent upon the will. So let's take the next stage. What brings about the next beginning of the concrete knowledge? Don't say the previous concrete knowledge, because that has to come to an end, and then the will is what brings about the next concrete knowledge.
Will, but the problem is though, if you have the infinite cause, if you have in your brain, you're imagining will, concrete knowledge, will, concrete knowledge, will, concrete. That's what your model says, right? The problem is that since it goes back infinitely, there is no point at which there was the first concrete knowledge, and there's no point of the first thing. So you can't say that there always all you get is that interdependency that goes back forever.
But there's no dependency here. This is the problem. This is the issue I'm trying to get you to understand. There's no dependency because everything only exists in the present. So God is literally in the present. He creates from T1 to T2. Once the T2 has come to an end,
it doesn't start at T1. That's you're implicitly assuming that it just happens to start at T1. But since it goes back infinitely, there was never a time when God's will preceded the contingency. So the concrete knowledge always was there.
If the will comes about at T1, and it's not dependent upon the previous will or anything previous. No, but my friend. Look, either it's dependent upon it causally or it's not. Prove to me through argumentation how God's will is causally dependent upon the previous will.
I just did because.
No, you haven't. You explained it.
I'll make the argument. His will is a function of his knowledge, meaning his knowledge has to reach a certain state for him to know that it's time to make the next thing.
Yep.
So therefore, there's a causal relation with his knowledge and his will,
which is restricted to the what? The present.
Yeah, and whatever. But the point is that relationships is the direction it goes from will to knowledge to will, and then will to action, right?
Yep.
In that knowledge, there's a set of things that has to occur.
Yep.
And in that set, so there's a cause. We agree with the causal relation so far. Knowledge causes the will.
Yep.
We agree with this?
Yeah, but when does it cause the will? Does it cause it simultaneous or after?
Before.
So no, you said knowledge causes will.
Yeah, so we're going. It has to be temporal. There's no such thing as a.
No, I'm saying that if knowledge causes will, the knowledge has to move on to the next present moment for it to cause the will, is what your argument is.
So say it again.
You said that the knowledge causes the will, right?
Yeah, concrete knowledge.
Right?
Yeah.
Concrete knowledge causes the will, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about two independent states. We're talking about the previous concrete knowledge to bring about the next will that God brings into brings into volition.
That second concrete knowledge is different from the previous concrete knowledge.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get you to understand.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. the concrete knowledge of the next state is different from the concrete knowledge of the previous state.
Yep, okay.
But it includes all of the concrete knowledge of the previous state.
Okay.
Because in the concrete knowledge, there's knowledge that I did this concrete thing in the previous state, which wasn't there in the previous state, right? So there's a causal dependency between two states of
Is
knowledge. Of course, because the thing I just told you.
How can something be causally dependent when there's a thing outside of it that brings it into effect, which is the will? You can't just say that. Oh,
you're just saying multiple causes. I'm saying that.
Wait. I'm saying that if you acknowledge that there's a will, and the argument put to you that there is a will, you have to firstly negate the argument, the person's argument that the will is required for the knowledge to come about. In order for you to say that the concrete knowledge is causally required by the previous concrete knowledge, you have to prove through argumentation that the will doesn't come into this.
No, the will does. You can allow the will to come into it. It's not, how does it do with what I'm saying?
So therefore, you can't say that the knowledge is causally dependent upon the previous knowledge.
It is. It's just multiple causes.
My friend, look, if it's dependent upon it, it can only be dependent upon it if it occurs simultaneously. But it doesn't.
No, but dependency occurs in a temporal fashion. Right?
Yes. So therefore it comes afterwards.
Yes.
Yes. So what's in between the concrete knowledge that ends and the concrete knowledge that begins?
The will.
And the will belongs to what? The previous state or the next state?
The previous state.
No, the next state.
And the previous state.
No.
The will needs to know the previous state occurred, right?
You're missing the point. I'm not talking about the will that brought about the previous concrete knowledge. I'm trying to get you to understand that when it goes from the previous concrete knowledge to the next concrete knowledge, which is separated by a temporal gap, what brings it about is the next will.
I know.
But you said the previous is dependent upon the previous will.
Dependent on the previous will because the previous will is dependent on the previous knowledge, which is dependent on the previous concrete knowledge.
No, but it's not though. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. I tell you why. The previous will occurs.
Yes.
It brings about the concrete knowledge. The effects take place. They come to an end.
Wait. The previous. Say again. The previous will.
The previous will.
Okay, that's sort of a blank T. Okay, nothing happens.
So previous will brings about the effect.
Yes.
With the effect comes the acquisition of concrete knowledge.
Yes.
The effect takes place.
Yes.
The effect comes to an end.
Yes.
With it, the concrete knowledge of that present moment comes to an end. Yes.
Completed. Yes.
Now the next point that occurs is what? What brings about the next point? What's the first thing that brings about the next present state? The will.
Technically it's the knowledge that the previous state ended. Because how would you know the next state ended?
No, now you're misrepresenting my argument.
Let's put it this way: once the acquisition of the
you have to show why the will isn't. Now, to explain to me why the will isn't the reason behind the next effect coming about.
Sure. No. He completes the concrete. He gets the concrete knowledge of the current time, right? At T, whatever. He gets concrete knowledge. Once that concrete knowledge is acquired, 5 minutes. No, first. Once the concrete knowledge is acquired, there's like a gap will theoretically occur. But since that thing is always there's no real gap. It immediately knows that this state ends. So knowledge comes first, and then from that it generates the will.
Yep, the concrete knowledge. He knows through the concrete knowledge when that present moment comes to an end.
Yes.
So the next bit is what initiates the next effect, which is the acquisition of the next concrete moment.
Obviously, the concrete knowledge.
So in order for you to show that the concrete knowledge is dependent upon the previous concrete knowledge, you have to get rid of the mechanism that brings the next concrete knowledge into existence. I'll tell you why. Because this is what an infinite regress is all about. It is the causal dependency upon the previous thing. You have to show, through argumentation or whatever, that the concrete knowledge is causally dependent, but it's not. It's causally dependent upon what? The necessary being's will, which is outside of the effect. It is outside of the world or the universe.
It's not do you agree with me that the necessary being cannot make the next state without the knowledge that it made the previous state?
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
So,
But that doesn't mean it's causally dependent upon the previous knowledge.
But it doesn't mean that.
Not without you negating the will.
No, but
Show me how the will now needs to be negated. Give me an argument.
The will.
And I'll let you have this last word, and let's see how well you do.
You can have last word. It's okay.
No. I need to go, inshallah.
I'm going to repeat myself. Maybe it's my.
I think you probably will.
Yeah. Maybe we're not. Either you're not getting me, or I'm not getting you.
Yeah. I think maybe it's late in the day. You know?
Maybe later in the day. But the will. I don't know.
No, I'm pretty confident that the argument that I've given you is airtight. Airtight in the sense that in order, and anyone who looks into this will look back and say, in order for the agnostic gentleman to be able to show that the concrete knowledge is causally dependent upon the previous knowledge, concrete knowledge, he has to negate the thing that brings the next concrete knowledge into effect, which is God's will.
Don't you think that do you agree at least that the concrete knowledge of any state contains the concrete knowledge of the previous state?
It does, but it's not causally dependent. It's causally dependent upon God's will. Because remember, each concrete knowledge is defined by what? The beginning of the present moment and the end of the present moment. The next thing doesn't even exist. It only comes into existence when God wills it into effect.
So I think perhaps our disagreement is on what we mean by cause. When I say cause, I'm just saying sufficient condition.
And the sufficient condition I've given you is God's will. And
it's not sufficient because God's will must be. God's will is different in every single state.
Yes.
So then it can't be sufficient. Because if the sufficient condition was.
Oh, that's a very good point. God's will is different in each state.
Exactly.
So in other words,
that means God's chain of conditions. So therefore you're stuck.
No, my friend, because the will is not dependent upon the previous will. The will existed back there. You have to show that the will extends and then affects the next will.
Because the concrete knowledge is cumulative.
Okay,
so therefore it extends.
But how can that be possible when the previous thing is non-existent?
Because he knows that it happened.
No. Now you're conflating. Now you're going. Now you're jumping from the will to the knowledge. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do not do that.
I'm trying to put it. That's why I'm saying the will is a function of the knowledge.
No, but you can't bring it all together. Look, if God's will affects the next will, and the previous will doesn't exist, the only thing that exists is God's present will.
And the knowledge that he made the previous state.
And God's present will is conditioned. It is not causally dependent upon the previous thing because the previous thing doesn't exist. Once you understand,
it doesn't have to exist to be causally impactful. Because once he, it's like,
okay, this is a new definition of causality.
That's why I felt that maybe our understanding of causality is a little bit different. But all I'm saying is that his knowledge, the condition you just said, the condition is sufficient to be. The condition itself has a causal.
It's causally effete. It doesn't have any causal strings.
In the sense that God remembers. That's why. Because he remembers, the memories continue. At least you agree that God's memory is dependent on him creating.
Yes, of course, it has to be. Otherwise, God would be ignorant, right?
Yeah, but it's dependent, though, right?
It's causally dependent. It's conditionally dependent, not causally, because the cause. Look, when that thing comes to an end, God immediately knows. But he doesn't use the previous knowledge to bring the next knowledge into effect. He brings it about through his volition, which is outside of creation.
Let's put it this way: if I had the order of T's, right, and I take like T15 or something and move it to like a previous thing, like move it to a later time.
That would only be possible if you can prove that there is a causal chain that goes right the way back to infinity. I'm saying it's not possible because firstly, presentism allows us to define what actually exists, and what brings about each present moment is God's will. And that's all I need to argue. All I need to do is present an argument which I believe is airtight, and I don't think it's possible for a person to come along without claiming that the previous thing has to exist, or proving that the previous thing has to exist in order for it to causally affect the next thing. I'm saying the boundary here is between the present and the past, which one is non-existent and the existent, and the other is existent.
And all I'm saying is that God needs to know that he did the thing before he does the next thing, right?
Thank you for a good stimulating conversation.